This is the Cats Roundtable with John Catsimatidis.
Everywhere around the world, they come to America. Every time that flag's unfurled, they come to America.
Good morning, America. This is the Cats Roundtable. John Catsimatidis here. One great show for you today. Congressman Andy Briggs that wants to be the governor in Arizona. Newt Gingrich, who spent 90 minutes in the Oval Office with President Trump. Jose Santamaria, and what's going on with the European economy. David Malpass, the former World Bank chairman. Dr. Peter Michalos, live long and prosper. Gordon Chang, a lot of problems in China. Lynn Shaw, helping our kids. Tal Heinrich, some interesting discussions about what's going on in Israel. Geraldo Rivera and Rachel Gessler, the suspension of the Jones Act. What does that mean? Well, we're going to find out. Let's start off with the Deputy Director of the FBI, Christopher Raia. With us today is Christopher Raia, and he is the Deputy Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He was involved in Federation of International Football Association, and whoa, what a home run that was. Over 100 billion people ended up watching it. We had 104 games in America and 7 million people in the seats. And the FBI was responsible to make sure they keep those 7 million people, I guess, safe. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I got to be honest with you, John. The last two or three weeks, last 39 days, if you will, it has been a challenge for the FBI, very resource intensive, related to FIFA, and just keeping the American people safe, along with our, other federal, state, and local partners. I might start with just a few numbers here to let you know what we responded with. So for us, this was really an all hands on deck. Bureau-wide, again, we're talking about 11 cities across the country, 78 just here in the United States. I believe it was 104 or 100 some across North America. But we dedicated 5,000 different personnel to this effort. One of our duties was to conduct background checks for coaches, other accredited personnel, players. We conducted something like 300,000 background checks for folks. We tracked a myriad of threats in the U.S., outside the U.S., and I know I speak for the director when I say I'm really, really proud of how the Bureau responded here and how the Bureau performed here. This was a special event of epic proportions for two different reasons, really. One, the breadth, depth, and scale of it. Again, it encompassed 11 cities, 78 some games, and each one of those games was the size of the Super Bowl, if not larger. And so when you put those two things together, normally, we have just one Super Bowl a year we have to worry about. Well, we had 78 we had to worry about in the matter of 39 days. And then on top of that, the last time some event like this came to the United States of this magnitude was 1994. And a lot of things have happened since 1994. 9/11 hadn't even happened yet. Threats have gotten much more complex. They've gotten much more pervasive. And so really for us, this was a historic response. And again, partnering with our state, local, and other federal partners, a historic response. And we performed very, very well, kept everybody safe. And our citizens, along with other citizens from around the world, enjoyed the game for the 39 days.
Was this the biggest task in FBI history? I mean, it seemed like, over a few-week period, you had that many people, that you had to protect?
Yeah, absolutely. This was the largest, what we call special event. So we give special event designations to these rather large things. So think rather large events that happen throughout the country each year. Think inauguration, UNGA, which I know you're familiar with, the United Nations General Assembly, the Super Bowl. We give special event designations to those. This special event for FIFA was the largest, encompassed the most area as far as 11 cities. It went on for 39 days and brought in the most amount of people that we have seen in the history of the sport and of our special event designations.
Now, a week ago or so, the Secret Service made an announcement that they had over 10,000 threats that they had to check out against the people they protect. Did you have any amount of threats that you could talk about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We have threats come in every day. In fact, that was probably, John, our major role, was really threat mitigation. And so we were in charge of what we called the Intelligence Coordination Center, and that was stood up here in the Hoover Building. And that was a conglomeration of FBI, all of our intelligence, our USIC partners, all of our other federal, state, and local partners, and we housed them in one area. And as threats came in, now look, 99.9% of these threats were completely innocuous, right? They were uncredible, unspecified, and there wasn't much to it. But when you have a threat of this size and this magnitude, it is a huge terrorist target. So we have got to run every single one of those threats, every single one of those threats to ground. And so I don't have the number in front of me. I do know it was in the thousands. I do know that we did produce over 100 intelligence reports that got sent to our state, local, and partners, just making state, local, and other federal partners, just making them aware that there was a threat and to be on the lookout. But again, the majority of those threats were all unspecified, not credible, and we ran the majority of those things to ground.
The other two numbers I have in the final game, and I might have said it before, 2 billion people watched it. And also within all the games, the number minimum, and I talked to Andrew Giuliani, I think that's where I got it from, over 100 billion people have watched all the games on television or internet, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it might have been a lot more than 100 billion. The president was saying that he'd love to do this event again in 2028. I guess soccer could be competing with American football.
I think if you take a look, John, I think soccer, globally is much larger than American football, as much as I hate to say it being a football fan. And I think we saw that. We saw how popular that sport is in the last 39 days with all the people that you had just mentioned, all the viewership and everybody who came to these cities around the country to enjoy themselves and enjoy the sport.
I spoke to Dr. Oz last week and about Medicare and Medicaid and all the fraud going on. Tell us, is the FBI involved in helping them on this fraud?
Yeah, absolutely. We're intimately involved. In fact, Dr. Oz and I participated in a press conference here a while back in Minnesota, so I got a chance to really sit down with him and talk about the amount of fraud with him personally. And so it was a phenomenal discussion. But we, in the last 6 to 8 months, we have pumped a lot of energy, a lot of calories into our fraud threats. And once the vice president stood up the task force to eliminate fraud and created the DOJ's National Fraud Enforcement Division, I will tell you the FBI was all in on that. Another thing we did, in addition to surging resources, making cases, arresting folks, is we started a novel concept. We started a most wanted fraudsters list, much like our top 10 list or much like our most wanted list, but specifically focused on the most egregious fraudsters that we were looking for, that had been indicted, that had skipped out during trial, waiting for trial, and we just used that concept in order to bring some notoriety to it. And I cannot tell you how highly successful that most wanted fraudsters list is. In just 5 weeks since we launched this initiative, we captured three of our most wanted fraudsters that had done some of the most egregious illicit schemes in the country. Not talking about millions of dollars. Some of these schemes were almost into the billions of dollars, defrauding Medicare, defrauding Medicaid. You've heard about Feeding Our Futures, which was a child nutrition, a rampant child nutrition program that was that was defrauded of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. We had a couple of those folks put on the fraudster list as well. And we've had a lot of success in that space. We're going to continue to work in that space. And I think we're going to continue to get more fraudsters, a lot of these most wanted fraudsters off the list. And from working this stuff for the last 23 years, John, I will tell you, this type of energy, this type of work into this space is long overdue. These fraudsters, they take advantage of our most vulnerable population, our mentally challenged, our elderly population, our poor population, and they just fraud them for everything that they own. And so the fact that we're putting a lot of attention on this through the White House Task Force and the DOJ National Fraud Enforcement Division, I can't think of a better way to use our resources right now than combating that.
Thank you for the great job you're doing with the FBI, the great job that Kash Patel is doing with the FBI. I look forward to talking to you again real soon and letting all Americans realize what is going on in America.
Thank you, and have a good day, sir.
The Cats Roundtable.
Calling us back is Congressman Andy Biggs from the state of Arizona. Congratulations on your big victory again in Arizona. Tell us about it.
Yeah, John, thanks. It was great, and it sets the stage. We ran this race with an eye looking right at the Democrat incumbent, trying to unify the party, so I did not insult anybody, any Republican. I just kept telling him I need every vote, and we got a great turnout of folks coming to the ballot box for us in the primary. We need to double it, though, for the general.
Who's in charge of the Democratic Party in Arizona? Is it the socialists or the regular Democrats?
So we've got them of all stripes here. We had some of the socialists win. We actually saw some of the more traditional radical left Democrats beat back some of the socialists. So it's their hodgepodge right now, and they run all their money out of one of the local county parties because the state party kind of went bankrupt there. So it's time for us to take Arizona back. This is the best chance we're going to have for a long time.
Now, let me ask you about Arizona. Have you gotten rid of the bad people that were voting, or any migrants that were voting, or anything like that?
Yeah, they've been cleaning up voter rolls in Maricopa County, which is the biggest, but also in several of the other counties. They've also been cleaning up the voter rolls. And if you clean up the voter rolls, that is the type of thing that will actually get us a cleaner election. It's not the be-all and end-all. There's a lot of other things we want to do to look more like Florida's gold standard, but this is going to be helpful. You know,
you're running for governorship. The race is, 90 days away or something like that? How many counties are you going to hit?
Well, so Arizona's got huge counties. You got counties that are bigger than New Jersey, for instance, and as far as geographical areas. So we got 15 counties. I will be in all 15 of those counties, and I've been in most of those counties and all over the state. State's the fifth largest state in the union geographically. It's a huge state, and I've been all over the state, and I will continue to be all over the state. In fact, that's the number one thing is that people, you get onto the rural areas, they're like, well, you promised to come back even as governor and not just campaign. That's of course. And John, there are counties that I've been into 20 plus times in the last year. So it's all over the place. It's an all hands on deck and be everywhere in the state.
Give us one more thing that you're emotional about that we want to fix for our country.
We've got to fix affordability. I mean, that's the number one issue wherever I go, even when I'm in other states helping other people campaign. They want to restore the American dream, John. And there's a lot of young people that feel like they can't ever get into a single-family home, which is not good for the country. And I'll tell you why this is emotional to me, because I've got kids that want to get into a single-family home, but the average age now is well above 40 years old for first-time home buyers. And that is because homes are just too expensive to buy, and a lot of that is permitting, a lot of it is is scarcity of land or municipalities controlling it so much. A lot of it is even the supply chain issue. So we've got to fix that, and you do that by policy. And the policy is to allow the market to regulate itself, and that means that what you have to do is you have to reduce the regulations, you have to reduce the tax burdens, you have to reduce the permitting requirements. That a lot of it are just wasted. So that's a huge thing in Arizona, but it's also huge wherever I go.
Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you again real soon.
Thanks, John. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. Calling in, Newt Gingrich. Well, Newt, let's talk about what's going on in our country. The big vote is the Democrats claim, can they win without cheating?
You know, if you look at, I think two of the most interesting things, and I wrote about this at Gingrich 360, you've got New Jersey, where the governor has had to announce that they've already found at least 6,600 people who were registered to vote who are not U.S. citizens. This, of course, is after telling all of us that this didn't really exist. It wasn't really a problem. And I saw Mark Wayne Mullins, who's the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, and he said he thinks they're going to be very embarrassed because he thinks there are actually going to be more than 30,000 people that were registered who are not American citizens. Now, what makes it doubly funny to me, and some of the folks who are listening to us probably saw this on the internet, the Olive Garden has a special this year where for $600 you can buy all the pasta you can eat for the year. So you can literally go back to Olive Garden again and again. But to do that, you have to have a photo ID. So in 50 states, you can go to Olive Garden and you can, if you've bought this package, and you can get your pizza or you can get your pasta if you have a photo ID. So here are the Democrats who are against a photo ID for voting, when the photo ID is now so common that even Olive Garden is using it as a way of handling their sales promotion. And it makes me wonder, John, and I don't know what your thoughts are on this, but why are the Democrats so opposed to being able to identify who votes, and why are they so opposed to a federal bill that says you have to be an American citizen to vote? I mean, what is there with Schumer and with the Democratic leadership that they are just deeply opposed to two simple requirements? You have to be an American citizen, and you have to be able to prove who you are with a photo ID. It's amazing to me how hard they're fighting against this.
Well, Democratic voters themselves have voted, polled at least 70%, 75% that they're willing to use voter ID. It's the leadership of the Democratic Party that's afraid of losing.
You know, we see this again and again. The American people, including most Democrats, on a whole range of issues, are on one side, and the Democratic leadership is basically anti-American. Again and again, if you have an 85-15 issue, the Republicans and independents and most Democrats will be for the issue, and 15% will be against it, and that 15% will include all the Democratic leadership. It's really a comment on how much out of touch they are with the American people.
I agree with you 110% on that. The fact is, Biden, the President Biden that we knew in the White House was not the Biden we knew. So who was really running the White House, Mr. Speaker?
Well, I've always assumed that Barack Obama's team was really the people behind the scenes all came up through Barack Obama. And that if you really looked at, who decided on pardons, who decided on policy, it was clearly not Joe Biden. And I agree with you. I negotiated with Biden in the 80s. I mean, and I knew him as a senator. I knew him when he was chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee. He had just simply gotten to a point where he wasn't there anymore. He was the guy we knew has aged out and simply was incapable of running the government.
That's why I'm not going to blame Joe Biden, but the FBI or whoever the powers may be should find out who was in charge, because somebody deserves to go to jail.
Well, I agree with you that the American people deserve to know for 4 long years who was in the room making the decisions. Now, it could be that it was Joe Biden, because if you go back and you look, for example, when Woodrow Wilson had a stroke, his wife basically ran the government for about a year right after World War I. I mean, he literally was incapacitated, and they wouldn't let anybody in the room except the doctor and his wife, and she basically made all the major decisions. An amazing period.
Thank you so much for coming on, and God bless you, God bless America, and thank you for continuing to speak out for our country.
Great. Take care.
The Cats Roundtable.
With us today is Rachel Gressler, and she's the economist at the Advancement of American Freedoms. Rachel, the Jones Act, what the heck is it?
Most Americans don't know about this law because it was enacted in 1920. Is an attempt to protect America and actually expand shipbuilding here, and instead it has done the opposite, because what the law does is it requires that any shipments between 2 U.S. ports, so domestic shipments, they must occur on a U.S.-built, U.S.-flagged ship that is 75% U.S.-owned, 75% U.S. crewed. And so while the intent here was to have a vibrant, shipping industry and a huge fleet in the U.S., the opposite has occurred, and we only have 93 Jones Act compliant ships in the U.S. today, and that's down from well over 400 in 1950. And so all this is doing is just restricting the ability of U.S. companies to obtain things domestically from one port to another, and instead they're often going overseas, and we're importing things that we should be just relying on domestically.
Now, Rachel, you said we're down to 93. We had 400 in 1950. When they created the act in 1920, how many do you think we had?
Oh, I think it was even more than that.
Probably thousands.
The problem here is that when you create this protectionist measure, there's no competition, and so there's no incentive for the U.S. to be producing more ships and to be producing them more efficiently. And the few that we have left, the 93 that we have, they're ancient. And so it's more expensive to ship on those Jones-compliant ones, and oftentimes there's just not available supply.
Recently, there was some examples made. I know I read in one of the newspapers about how it helped get a product to California that had no product.
Yes, you see companies, I think Southwest Airlines is one of them, that is now able to get fuel coming from the Gulf, from Texas and Louisiana up to California on these ships, because there's more supply now available, that they don't have to all be the Jones Act compliant ones. And beyond just, jet fuel, it's crude oil, it's gasoline, it's even the things that are going into the inputs for fertilizer, which we know have been causing a big problem for American farmers. So I think the fact that the president has waived the Jones Act is a great thing, absolutely, for the moment when we're seeing these soaring energy costs. But this could be a good policy to keep in place for the future as well.
You work for a great organization, the Advancement of American Freedom. What else are you guys working on?
Oh, we're working on a lot. Our goal here is preserving our constitutional heritage, but we've been doing a lot to essentially try to get the problems the government's creating out of the way and allow Americans more on their own. And one thing we've actually released today, and I just came from a Hill event, was our Index of Economic Freedom. And so we're looking at life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the ability of Americans to pursue those things across the U.S., and also looking at the differences in states. And what we consistently find is that when you have states that are having policies that are letting Americans be more in control than the government is through lower taxes, fewer regulations. That's where you see them thriving. That's where the jobs are being created and the incomes are rising and people are more free to pursue those American ideals of life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Now,
President Trump did this by executive order, I believe. What happens at the end when, if the Democrats get in, are they pro-Jones Act or against the Jones Act?
I think most of them are pro-Jones Act. So right now, the waiver that's in place is set to expire on August 16th. And the White House has said that they're considering another extension of it because I think they see that it's helping keep prices down that would otherwise be even higher than they are. But there are also some Republicans who support this in Congress, essentially those who are in the districts that have the little shipbuilding that does happen in the U.S. But certainly I think it's more of a threat if the Democrats come in that they would want to keep this in place.
Well, what's the advantage? I mean, you're protecting 93 ships?
Yeah, protecting a dying industry that's still dying. It's just ironic because if we did open it up, then there would be the incentive to compete more in the U.S., and we would probably see more jobs in shipbuilding in the U.S., and we would see better ships that were more efficient and then more ancient. And so it's the opportunity to not only expand the jobs in the shipbuilding, but just think of the costs for Americans and for businesses across the U.S. if they no longer have to import something from Asia, that they could instead get from a neighboring state just because of the limited supply of the ships. There's just huge opportunities here.
Rachel Gressler, thank you for coming on, and let's catch up again real soon.
My pleasure. Thanks so much, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back right after this break. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. If you ever miss a segment or want to hear it again, go to WABCRadio.com. Go to podcasts, go to minicast, and play back your favorite segments. What's going on with China? What's going on with the Far East? There's nobody better than Gordon G. Chang. And Gordon, where do we start?
I think we start on Thursday, and when President Trump announced that Xi Jinping was coming to the White House on September 24th. That is a confirmation of what the President said when he was in Beijing in May for the first of the two summits this year. This is important because there's so many disagreements right now with China. Secretary Rubio has been trying to lay the groundwork for what he calls a very positive meeting. He sat down with China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi. And what was interesting was the press availability that the Secretary of State gave, because on Wednesday, he was directly asked whether China was providing targeting information and data to the Iranians for use against American forces, and he refused to answer the question. So people are going to wonder about the extent and continued involvement of China in Iran's war effort.
There was articles in the New York Times, there was articles in the Wall Street Journal about the continuous, not necessarily attack on the United States, whether it's the drugs, whether it's the political influences.
Yeah, China talks about unrestricted warfare, and that is a struggle against the United States below what we consider to be acts of war. So if there is certainly fentanyl, which is a project not just of Chinese criminal gangs, but those gangs operate with both the knowledge and the approval at the highest levels of the Communist Party. And then, of course, we have China's stealing of American intellectual property. We heard this last week with the White House's Director of Technology saying that China's Kimi 3, which is their most recent AI model, distilled from Anthropic's fable. In short words, that is, they used Anthropic's model to train the Kimi model, which is a theft of intellectual property. And so there's going to be, we've heard from the administration warnings to China about this. We'll see what occurs in the next week or so in the run-up to, of course, that summit in Washington.
What else is going on in the Far East? I understand that there's difficulties going on in the Philippines.
Yes, I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that is the most important development in Asia right now. At Scarborough Shoal on Friday, we had the Chinese use water cannon on a Philippine boat. A CNN crew happened to be on the Philippine boat and watched the Chinese. Just a few days before that, Chinese sailors attacked a Filipino on a boat, causing a head injury. We're talking about events at Scarborough Shoal and Second Thomas Shoal. These are in the South China Sea. They're very close to the Philippines. They're thought to be part of the Philippines, and they're very far from China, but China claims them within its 10-dash line claim. So this is a continuing series of not only confrontations, but sometimes they get embroiled into worse. And we have to watch this very closely because the Chinese tactics are becoming much more aggressive and much more belligerent.
Gordon Chang at Gordon G. Chang on Twitter. Thank you so much for your update, and let's catch up again real soon.
Thank you so much, John.
The Cats Roundtable.
Calling in right now, Tal Heinrich, and she is the former spokeswoman of the Prime Minister of Israel, Mr. Netanyahu. Tal, you've been with us before. Where are we? I mean, the United States has bombed Iran 13 days in a row, maybe 14 tonight. Israel has been keeping their eyes open on what's going on with Lebanon. Give us the update.
John, it's a pleasure to join you here. You see, it's been, as you said, almost 2 weeks now of renewed U.S. strikes in Iran after the talks reached some kind of a stalemate, or in other words, the Trump administration seems to have discovered the extent to which the Iranians are not serious at all about stopping their pursuit of nukes. They don't wish to start acting like a normal nation, so it seems we knew that. When by we, I mean Israelis knew that. All they want to do, they want to keep blackmailing the West through their control of the Strait. But you see, there are all indications right now that President Trump has likely decided that this extortion has to stop. It has an expiration date, and he's the one deciding. He's talking about, we've seen these reports about bigger than ever before, major military punishment. Secretary Rubio said that the president's approach is a head for an eye, although I think I should tell you that I don't believe they mind losing their they don't mind, rather, losing their head, an eye, and an arm if that meant bringing down the West to some kind of submission along this process. But so we're seeing this rhetorical buildup, but there's also the staging out there with the spread of forces in the region, the overall massive deployment across this whole military theater. So this could develop in various ways, the way I see it. I know what I want to see because we're at the stage of a job half done. And I think, personally, I think the best option is fight hard, fight fast, and just, cause a serious damage to the lifeline, the major lifeline of this regime, and that would be the energy infrastructure. Of course, that would come with a cost, but I think that the lessons that we learned throughout history, even, the lesson we learned on October 7th is that you don't want a long war of some kind of tit-for-tat, attrition style. You have to finish the job, as they say, finish the job as quick as you can. And that we will gain a lot down the road in the future if we did that and not slowly dragging our feet.
Tal, any gut feeling what do you think is going to happen? I mean, just pure speculation. Any gut? I mean, President Trump said the other day, like you said, he went up to the Iranians because the Iranians said, an eye for an eye. And President Trump says, well, we're going to take a whole head for an eye.
Yeah, but they don't even mind losing their heads if that meant bringing us to our knees. And by us, I mean the West. Represented by Israel and the United States here. You see, I don't have a gut feeling because this can develop in various ways. We don't know where this would go. What I do know is that Iran, this regime, they are the bullies of the world, and they have no intention nor desire to change. And I'm speaking for many Israelis here. We knew that. We've been sounding this alarm for many years. We have no illusions because you see this regime, and we tried diplomacy, right, as a tool against them. This regime basically exists for two reasons: to keep their Shiite Islamist revolution going and expand it across the region, gain dominance over others, and to counter whatever the West is standing for through the demise of Israel and the United States. Now, if they give up the leverages that they created or the tools that they created for themselves to reach their goals, they have nothing. And it will be the beginning of their end. They will lose their head, so to say. They know that. We know that. And that's why there's no such a deal that would be a good deal for the West with them. No such deal that they will be willing to sign and actually comply with. For this reason, you see, we have these options of fight hard, fight fast, or a slow war of attrition in a tit-for-tat manner. What I think, my view is that this will exhaust us more than it will harm them, and that's actually what they're aiming for. That's what they want. We've had it in Israel with Hamas for years until October 7th, and then we realized that it wasn't effective because you have to beat these enemies.
This is John Catsimatidis. If you want to hear the full interview, go to WABCRadio.com.
The Cats Roundtable.
Calling in right now is Geraldo Rivera, a great television host, a radio host. Now he's working with Chris Cuomo at News Nation. We have a charity that we both do along with Bill O'Reilly. Tell us about the charity that you've been involved in for such a long time.
Will do, John. I'm delighted that I'm teamed up with Bill O'Reilly again. We were together at Fox News. And this week, we'll talk about it later, John. Bill Ritter, the longtime Eyewitness News host, was given an award along with the Carmelite nuns. Bill Ritter given the award for his courage coming forward and telling his audience that he has early stage Alzheimer's, I believe. He's stepping down from his job as anchorman of Eyewitness News. So it was an honor to be with him and his wife, Kathleen, and say hello. But to see you guys, the charity, what we do is we help those who might be institutionalized to live as independent living as they can with their families. We work hard to provide services and resources for these families. We have people who've been with us for decades, for generations, since we busted up Willowbrook, that awful place on Staten Island, John.
Well, I remember the big investigation you did. It seems like such a long time ago, and you exposed some of the ugly things that were going on in Willowbrook, and you were able to put together this charity. Now, if I remember right, when you and Bill O'Reilly were speaking about it, that you're up to almost, was it 27 buildings or 27 centers that are helping people now?
More than that, I thought Dickie Schneps, our delightful, dynamic creator, I thought she said 44. But it shows that it's in the double digits, and we're very proud of it, every facility. Some of them now being, as we spoke in the event, some being renovated to make it easy for people with disabilities to get around. It's funny, John. I've been around this scene so long, going back now more than half a century to the Willowbrook days. I still see people on the street, maybe parents with a Down syndrome kid, and they look at me, I look at them, we know who's who, and the relationship, and it goes back that deep. The roots of this charity are that deep that now the people are aging out. Some of the old timers we took from Willowbrook, they've had lives that they would not have had, whole lives, and so easy. You see a crazy homeless person on the subway, you want to say, hey, my God, why this person should be in an institution? Maybe they should be in some kind of facility. But when you see someone who has an obvious disability, like a Down syndrome person, you know that they need the resources so they can live independently, that they can live on their own, or live at least with their parents, but supported by this wonderful, compassionate charity that emphasizes these folks with disabilities deserve a full life. And there's a memo circulating in the Justice Department, John, that I hope that you get involved in as we go on. The memo says that the federal government should not have any responsibility to support the disabled in their own homes or in their own facilities, that the federal government's job is to prevent discrimination, but that doesn't equal discrimination. It has for 50 years equaled discrimination, but now they were troubled a bit that the federal government might be trying to pull back from the support that these parents need so desperately to give a full life to these.
Well, Geraldo, I'm only going to mention one more thing. Somebody in the state government or the city government, and we live in New York right now, is at one time we had 28,000 people in New York in mental institutions, and now there's only about 5, 6, 7,000, and that doesn't mean we've cured the other 20,000, but they're on the streets of New York or in the subways in New York. I want to have that discussion with you in the near future because it's a problem we're creating for people.
I agree with you. It's a problem that should not exist, but there are also very separate populations. Someone who is criminally insane is very different from someone with a disability like Downs, and it should be obvious to people if they, it's too easy to bunch everybody with a disability in the same basket. But I am acutely aware of what you're speaking of, John. I think it's a very, very important aspect of this whole thing. We cannot allow people to act out. My own daughter was just on the subway, and someone was demanding old lady, demanding money. So my daughter handled it with grace. She pretended that she was looking at her phone or tablet, and the lady finally went away. But I mean, the scene is too unsettling. No one likes
Geraldo,
that.
both sets of people need help.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing you again real soon.
John, I look forward to it, and thanks again for your generosity.
Thank you. You are listening to the Cats Roundtable. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Cats Roundtable. Live long and prosper. What is today's Dr. Peter Michalos, like every Sunday? Dr. Peter Michalos, what's on your mind today?
Well, today, John, we're going to talk about travel safety. And one of the common things that happens when we travel is something called traveler's diarrhea, and there are various bugs. The most common is called E. coli. But the one that's been in the news lately has been cyclospora, which was found on a lot of different areas with lettuce. And I always tell people that they have to understand that a lot of this actually happens because the people working in the field sometimes don't have ready access to bathrooms, and they actually use the fields as toilets sometimes, and that's one of the ways a lot of these bacteria spread, where there's plants that are growing just above the ground in these fields. And when you see from some other countries, they don't have bathrooms set up like in the U.S. A lot of these places have portable toilets and things like that. Some of these places don't have that. So that's why it's very important to, I tend to avoid, when I go out of the country, to avoid things like, lettuces and spinach and things that are growing in the field, unless I know specifically it's a very high-end hotel or restaurant where they're really cleaning and washing things off, because you can get, traveler's diarrhea. The good news is that with traveler's diarrhea, good old-fashioned Pepto-Bismol works quite well, because the bismuth actually does kill bacteria, and also good old-fashioned Cipro works well on E. coli. And as far as this outbreak in the United States with the cyclospora, good old-fashioned Bactrim, which is 2 antibiotics in one, sulfamethoxazole and trimethoprim, works, and it basically kills the cell wall of this bacteria. And our large intestine is where we absorb all our water, reabsorb it, so that when that gets infected or swollen, they can't absorb the water, and that's why people get diarrhea when they get food poisoning. And if you're abroad, it's important to consider IV hydration. You might even have to go to the hospital if you get really dehydrated, because dehydration can actually kill somebody. That's why I always tell people when they travel abroad to always get a travel health insurance policy so that you can go to a private hospital and be covered and also have coverage for medical evacuation. And these policies are very inexpensive. Other travel safety tips, of course, people get a lot of sunburn, and we know that squamous cell cancers and basal cells and melanomas happen from chronic exposure to UV light. Buy a sunscreen, especially with little kids, that's SPF at least 30 up to 50, and that it's mineral-based, and the mineral-based is not toxic to the skin, and you don't get toxic things absorbed into your skin. And also wear protective UV glasses that block UVA and UVB, so it slows down cataract formation. Wraparound glasses are the best. And, of course, a hat with a brim, because places that are common for skin cancer are top of the ears, top of the cheeks, back of the neck, and the nose, of course. And that's why people who live in New Zealand get more skin cancers on the right, because they drive on the right side of the road. And here in the States, we get more skin cancers, left arm, left face on the left side, because we drive on the left side. Also, when you travel, it's good to bring your copies of your prescriptions or a picture of your bottles, because if you lose them, most pharmacies, if you show them a picture of your prescription or the bottles, they will give you enough of a supply until you get back home. And when people travel, in case there's bad weather or change in plans or some type of natural disaster like a hurricane, bring extra pills to have with you to be prepared. And the other thing I tell people is if you have a neck pillow or you have any neck issues, sometimes it's good to travel and pack one of your own little neck pillows, because they make mini neck pillows that you can use on the plane to be more comfortable, and even in the bed to be comfortable. And some of the things to help speed up travel so you're not waiting online and carrying is try to apply for TSA pre-check, so you don't have to take your shoes off on the line and you get through much faster, and you don't have to go through the scatter radiation. You just go through a regular magnetometer. And the other thing is when you travel, if you can get global entry, if you're traveling in Europe or abroad, now with facial recognition, you just walk up and the scans your picture and they tell you welcome home, and they tell you your name, and you walk right through. You don't even have to take your passport out. So technology has made things a lot better with things like Clear and TSA pre-check and global entry. And these are some of the things you can do. And also when you rent a car, I always tell people, find out which car you're renting. And what I do is I quickly look up which car they're giving me, and I see whether it's in Europe or the United States that it has a 5-star crash test rating for front and side, especially when you're traveling with small kids. And when you're traveling with little babies, always get a rental car that offers the car seat options for children and small babies to protect them, because when we're abroad, the trauma centers don't exist like we have in the United States and many countries. So you want to travel safely and carefully, and keep listening for more of these health tips on living long and staying healthy.
Dr. Peter Michalos, thank you, and God bless you, and thank you for making our listeners live longer.
Thank you, John, for always getting the truth out. And in August, our book, The Death of Aging, has an entire chapter on travel tips and safety.
The Cats Roundtable.
Well, let's protect our kids. Well, it's Lynn's Warriors, lynswarriors.org, and it's Lynn Shaw. Lynn Shaw, tell us what's going on this week.
Good morning, John. This week I want to concentrate and focus on big tech. They keep telling us about AI, artificial intelligence, and trying to sell it to the American public. But the American public is increasingly rejecting it, especially for our kids, because there's a recent survey out. Over 80% of the American public, they do not want all of this artificial intelligence in the classrooms, in the homes, these chatbots and chat companions. Everybody's talking about it in the past week, including the White House, Capitol Hill, we at the Warriors, many organizations, because what big tech is doing, they're really trying to sell us a bill of goods. They keep making, especially in the last month, all these new announcements. They've got another product, they've got another promise that AI will change our lives forever. But, the answer is yes. many AI, we can all agree, we know this, is good for medical profession, for national security, for rooting out predators. But you know what? Let's look at the facts. Recently, AI-related stocks have weakened tremendously in the past about a week and a half now. There was 42 states. There was a tremendous outpouring on July 18th that we don't want AI, these big data centers, in our backyard.
Well, I mean, half the Instagrams I look at, it feels like half, at least 30, 40%, are fake news.
But that's what I'm talking about. AI is where it's at right now. That's national security, right, what you're talking about. Also, we've got a tremendous amount, calling them influencers, feeding our kids with the algorithms on TikTok, on Snap, on Instagram, all this wellness and health stuff. These are not even real people giving out what could be deemed as medical advice. So something has to be done right now, and that is holding big tech, something we talk about every week. Something has to be done to protect, put some guardrails around this technology. It is a runaway train. And again, the American public pushing back over 80%. Remember, the numbers are always higher. This is what we know about, 82%. So we can agree that big tech, AI is the future, but tremendous potential, right? But it is harming, especially the way it's being marketed right now to young people. Again, you just pointed out this national security threat, which you just pointed out. What's real, what's not? So parents right now are telling us they feel very overwhelmed. And, especially with these new apps with AI popping up seemingly every single day. Now, we can also agree AI can help kids in the classroom, but it can also harm. So that's why we have to support AI. It's not going away, but we have to have our government step up and help us. And the White House basically should do a nationwide public education campaign about artificial intelligence. We've done it before, John. We had smoking, seatbelts, opioids, public health emergencies. We want the White House to step up. We want HHS, Health and Human Services, to give us straightforward information about these AI deep fakes and chatbot companions to kids. Look at the online scams. Again, it's all under the umbrella of AI. It's digital manipulation, and that is ruining society, or will be affecting our kids, our future, I always say American adults and leaders. It really is a public health issue as well. So that AI umbrella is encompassing so much. But what families do today, start with the conversation, always talk to your kids, whether they're using these AI chatbots or AI companions, learn. Everybody's got to wake up, America.
The problem with the kids are, I'm not sure at the age of 15, 16, or 17, they're smart enough to realize a lot of it is fake news.
They're not, but John, it's our job. We're providing a public service announcement. We're giving it to the parents and caregivers, saying, wake up, talk to your kids, make them understand, because they think the AI, of course they think it's real. They think it's some glossy teenager talking to them and giving them this great, health kick. We got a whole thing going on with these peptides now, and that's a whole other program, how it can, make you healthier or more beautiful or more handsome. And it's all coming, again, national security threat, out of China. All this information, all of these fake, enzymes and proteins and vitamins. But kids are falling for it because it's not their fault, John. 30 and under, they've grown up in the digital bubble. But here's what I want to say about something. Innovation matters, but our kids matter more. And Washington works for us. So everybody has an opportunity, the public, house.gov, senate.gov, find out who represents you, write to them, sound the alarm, tell them we want more protections. And New York Governor Kathy Hochul put the first nationwide legislation in place. She will have no AI data centers in the state of New York. And that is something that is telling us that, we are leaders in New York. We need this across the country. We have to protect our kids.
Lynn Shaw, Lynn'sWarriors.org. Thank you for coming on, and we'll catch up again real soon.
Thank you, John.
Thank you for listening to the Cats Roundtable. Every Sunday morning, we'll bring you the latest in what's happening in our community, our country, and the world. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a nice Sunday.